Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Today's guest is coming to you from Newcastle in New South Wales. I do believe he is actually a little bit Jiu Jitsu royalty because I believe he's related to the Gracie family, I've been told. He's perhaps quite known within the Jiu Jitsu community, and we're looking forward to getting to know him quite a bit more. He is Luke Beston. Thanks for joining us, Luke.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
So can we start with that? How is that true that you're somehow related to the Gracie family?
Yeah, so my wife Angela, she's Carlos Gracie's granddaughter. So her mother was Carlos's daughter, one of 21 kids. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. So were you already doing jiu-jitsu when you met her, or?
Yeah. So I was a purple belt, and it was when we met, and it was one of her nieces, Rose Horian's daughter, that introduced us. Yeah, so I knew some of the family before then. Yeah.
Yeah. So you go back to Brazil and meet with the family much and stuff, or not so
Not
much?
so much since COVID, but they used to always come here. We'd go to America and Brazil like every chance we got, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
In the
Awesome.
lead up to us just having a quick chat, Luke, we were talking about your rank and that sort of thing. So you are a black belt. You're talking about you don't have a coach at the moment, but you're the guys who gave you a black belt. Speaking of jiu-jitsu royalty, can you talk us through that? That's pretty cool.
Yep. So up until brown belt, I was under Sean Kirkwood, John Will, Machado's. Amazing people. I'm sure you've talked to them in your podcast. Brilliant coaches, and maybe who I am today. So I owe them a lot. And so Sean had the first school in New South Wales, and then once I met Angela, started training with her family. So there was Bruno Pano, he's the representative down in Sydney back in the day, and then training with Royce and Royler especially. But yeah, it was always lucky to have people come and visit us and go overseas and stuff like that. So I kept training, and eventually I got the black belt from Royler and Holker and Bruno. Yeah.
That's
Was that
pretty
over
cool.
in the US, or?
So my grading was actually like the day I got the black belt was down at Maroubra Surf Club in Sydney with Bruno. Yeah, so that was special days back then, like with all the bra boys and stuff like that, training in Maroubra Surf Club. So that was hectic. Yeah.
What year's that?
So black belt was 2005. Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah. So the Bra Boys were a big thing, right? Like that was that Maroubra area, right? The Cronulla riots, the Bra Boys, that sort of time period.
Yeah, so a little bit after that, but I didn't know too much about it at the time who I was training with. I just thought they were all super nice to me, took good care of me, always just so nice to me. And now I only kind of found this stuff out later. And amazing guys, and yeah, I still keep in touch with some of them. I have a lot of love for those guys, and yeah, they're very special people.
They were just big surfies, and I didn't realize they were into the jiu-jitsu thing. You could see by them, they're obviously into the martial arts sort of style of things. That's interesting times. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, so, a lot of special memories. Yeah.
So, with training under the Gracie name for that period of time, how did you find that? Like, we've spoken to a lot of people, and then some of the people that you speak to that have, rolled with Royce or rolled with some of the Machados, it's like they do talk about that invisible jiu-jitsu, like everything just feels different. Was that something that you noticed, Luke? Did you kind of have that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, every time I got on the mat with these guys, I have to pinch myself that I'm firstly in the same room as them, because I remember when I started back in the day, it was before the internet, everything else. I wonder if I'll ever meet these people, and let alone getting to hang out and train with them, and just as much as they trained me well and taught me everything, you wrestle them and you'd feel like not even a white belt, nothing, and it's and that's just not blowing smoke. That's is how it is there. And their first generation of students, especially like the people back in the like Murillo, Bustamante, Gordinho, all those people, just another level. Yeah.
So what are they like as people? Can you tell us, like, is it sort of as you'd expect them to be, or are they kind of quite different outside?
Huge family, right? So Grandmaster Carlos had 21 kids. So it's like, to generalize, they're always super nice to me. Couldn't have been nicer to me. So yeah, they're great. The thing I see with a lot of them is they do practice what they preach. That's not the same with like other martial arts in general. Like I've trained other martial arts. I'm a martial arts nerd, and there's a lot of different things out there. But yeah, they do kind of like walk the walk, if that makes sense. The thing I talk about, the family, if you want like an insight into the family, it's my biggest thing that I learned is never get involved in an argument. So I told them like the Sopranos type thing. So if there's ever two family members arguing, you never say like, I think Fred's right and Susie's wrong, because they'll both turn around and say, hey, you shut your mouth, like you're not family kind of thing. So as close as I wasn't that close. So
Yeah.
it's like, don't get involved in family business, and
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
So getting your black belt in 2005, when did you start jiu-jitsu? How did you find it? Like, as you say, the internet wasn't really a thing. You weren't just seeing, you weren't jumping on Flow Grappling or anything like that. So how did you actually come across jiu-jitsu?
So I started in probably 94 grappling, 94, 93. Just because of UFC, like most people my age, my era, we're all training martial arts and every other thing, and then UFC 1 happened, and that changed the world. The martial arts world, not just jiu-jitsu, was before UFC 1 and after UFC 1. So we saw it. We, always get Black Belt magazine. This is back when things would get printed and you hold them in your hands and stuff, way before the internet, and as we know it today. And so had to go find this thing, did a little bit of judo. There was a submission grappling club in Newcastle with Neil Bodycourt, who's passed away, and Ian Wright, Sensei Ian Wright. And then Sean had the first MMA/BJJ gym, John Will Shoot Fighting at Rutherford. So I was just so lucky. I was right place, right time. These guys were the pioneers before me. And if they hadn't have done that, maybe I wouldn't have got started. I definitely wouldn't, got where I am today. So I was just so lucky. These very amazing martial artists and coaches and people were there, and just when I was ready to start, they already had laid the groundwork.
Tell us a bit more about those early days, Luke. What was it like? Like, day by day, was it something? Was it a bit like a fight club kind of thing, where it was a bit like underground type of thing, or were the classes fairly large and quite public?
More the underground type thing. I mean, they were very open and very welcoming. Like anyone come. Like I was just a kid, like a skinny kid, and these were all like badasses kind of thing training, and that they made me feel welcome and took me under their wing, and always took everything. That training was hard, like much harder than it is today in a sense. Just because it was like there wasn't that whole jiu-jitsu for everyone thing, and just I had this, other reasons that I wanted to train hard. I'll never quit. That just like, maybe if I didn't have those things drive me, I wouldn't have lasted. Not because of not the lack of the coaches, just the nature of the training. I think the two things, like, I'm not sure if this is the question, but that stood out to me that I just remember like back then there was the technique haves and have nots, because there was this, it wasn't the people, well, people were keeping secrets, not my coaches, but just there wasn't the internet, there wasn't BJJ fanatics. Fred would go to Brazil and then come back, right? When you get back from Brazil, right, we're going to come to your house and he's got his notes and here's the 3 sweeps and the 2 submissions that I learned. And it was almost like we have a deck of cards. Now everyone knows everything, and it's how well you know them, how hard you train, like the finer details. So that was one thing. And back then it was still the era where jiu-jitsu hadn't been proven as it is today. Like even grappling, people nowadays argue jiu-jitsu versus sambo, what's best. But back then it was like still karate versus jiu-jitsu and kickboxing versus jiu-jitsu. And I never had any challenges myself, but that we were trained like, if someone walks in tonight, you have to be ready to represent jiu-jitsu and prove jiu-jitsu. And that's a very different mentality when you're training. I want to win a tournament, or I want to learn self-defense, or I want to have fun with the other jiu-jitsu dads kind of thing.
I think as a person who started like jiu-jitsu as we know it now, as an older guy, right? So I started when I was 45. I think as a 45-year-old walking into that gym, I'm kind of like, I wonder what lawn bowls is like, like that's a tough gig to sort of just start in, right? And, you're sort of sitting there and saying, you're a skinny kid. So to make it through all of that, like there's obviously a level of toughness that you either had or you'd kind of learned through different martial arts or something, right? So what were you doing before jiu-jitsu that kind of gave you that mental fortitude to continue on with it?
Yeah, so my thing, like, why I got into martial arts in general, I got bullied really bad as a kid, really bad, and that's what got me into training, and that the martial arts changed my life. So to go off on to give you an expression, like, they were ready to pull me out at school at one stage and say, no, you're disabled, basically, for lack of a better word, and got into martial arts, got into training. I turned everything around. I got good grades, went to university, traveled the world. Met everyone I've met, all my best friends through jiu-jitsu, so. But yeah, that was my drive. So as much as like the coaches were nice, the training was hard. And as much as I hurt and got beat up and stuff like that and injuries, like I'm like, I can't quit. I can't go back to being how life was before that. So that was my drive, and that's still my drive to this day.
Wow. And tell us a bit more about getting your belt. So you talked about the black belt. What
Mhm.
was it like for you through the other belts, like from where you started in, would have been back in the 90s, yeah, that you started then, if you got your black belt in 2005?
Yeah. So all the belts were kind of, so everyone's belts, I suppose, are magical to them. But for me, it was kind of every single belt was kind of like almost like a black belt in terms of there wasn't that many people around with that
Yeah.
belt. So my coach Sean was the first one of three with John Simon, Anthony Lang, the first three blue belts in New South Wales. So I'm second generation. Okay, but for me, my thing again, I was never the top dog in the academy. Like I trained hard, don't get me wrong, but I was beatable. So my memory is like even like, will we ever get a blue belt? I remember thinking to myself, maybe one day I'll get a blue belt. That'll be cool. I'll be a blue belt. But then I get the blue belt, and the other guys in the academy are like, because there's all these badasses, Sean and Elvis Sinisic, and what all these guys are just like badasses, and then there's Beston. Like I can beat Beston. I'm going to tap the tap. So every time I got a belt, like I just come home just like my face raw because all the guys were like, that scalp I can take, he's beatable. Yeah, so it was hard, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah. It was
So
because
when you got your blue belt, what belt rank were your coaches? So where was Elvis? Where were those guys?
so yeah, Elvis. I use an example like because he was in Sydney. So, but yeah, they were all purple belt, brown belt, maybe like
Yeah,
they were generation well and truly a generation ahead of me.
yeah,
But that's like yeah. So they were all purples and
yeah,
maybe brown. I think Anthony
yeah.
Grosh was
Well,
brown,
like
maybe.
that was just so legit back in the day, wasn't it? Like a blue
Yeah,
belt was legit. Like nobody's beating a blue belt.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's one of the things you're talking about. No one on the. I give blue belts a hard time now, and they go, "What about when you're a blue belt?" And I go, "Oh, that yeah." But yeah, back then it was a different beast, and
Yeah.
maybe I set the tone for like blue belt incompetence kind of thing. So yeah.
So for people that don't know, like tell us what you really think of blue belts. What's
Uh,
your
so we have this thing, yeah. So if you follow me on the internet or whatever, like I'm relentless on the internet, especially with blue belts. But it's like the guys in the gym love it because I picked on white belts. They go, you're just an a-hole or whatever. But by blue belt, they're my saying is like they know me enough to know I'm only joking, but yeah, they're horrible enough to deserve you know, my rants kind of thing. And they look forward to their blue belt because they're like, I can't wait till like Luke's giving me hell at the academy. That means I've made it, So
I've made it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, he actually cares about me enough to like legit yell at me.
yeah, yeah.
And then up until a year ago or something, you were also an academy owner,
Mm.
right? So can you talk us through those early days of like, you starting a business or starting up your academy and how that kind of worked, taking that leap of faith and knowing that you can do that?
Yep, yep. So yeah, started teaching. Wow, probably running my own academy back 2003. So I started as a brown belt teaching, and I had to learn by trial and error because again there was no one really to follow, and I'm not sure if I was first or second, maybe full time school in Newcastle where you rented and weren't just in the back of a scout hall or whatever and things like that.
Yeah.
So again, how to run it as a no, it was always my passion. I always had a day job the whole way. I have a day job. This time it was never my main source of income. It was always my passion. But so you had to run it professionally and stuff like that. And that was all. The martial arts wasn't that way in general back like it is now. Everything was just a pure labor of love in the back of a scout hole, and everyone else was, you were doing something else during the day to put food on the table.
Yep.
and then talk us through like how it progressed, and then are you comfortable to tell us about the ending as well, why you
Yeah,
decided to
sure.
step away from it?
So I for 20 years the academy kept growing, growing, growing. Went from again, I was putting mats down in a fitness gym. So we rented a small commercial location, went to the location we are now, where Josh is now. And, then went through all that. COVID put a dent in kind of my passion a little bit because that was like, that was tough for everyone. I'm sure you and everyone listening that had an academy then, that was an absolute nightmare. And,
We're in Melbourne, so yeah, I think we know more than
no
most
better than me.
exactly how
Yeah, I'm
bad.
sorry.
Yeah,
So you had to deal with that. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and then, so I've been teaching 20 always my goal, probably up until COVID, was one day I will go full time. I'll go all in, and that will be my thing. But I didn't want to have it where I was stressed about either making ends meet or, even even compromising. So this is just on me. I'm not talking about anyone else, but I was like, you see it in any business, like where, and some other martial arts where, my kid needs braces. Well, maybe it's time to run a grading kind of thing. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but I always want to have, I could just do it because I want to do it and I love it. And I never have to compromise one bit on my principles kind of thing. And then COVID happened. I was like, I don't know if I want to be all boots and all in that in case, third wave or whatever comes, your third lockdown.
Mm.
And then my wife got sick. Are you familiar with this? So my
No, no.
wife, Angela has young onset Alzheimer's. So she's she's in care. She's bright at the end. She doesn't know me anymore, anything like that. She's very, very sick. So that happened around the same time. Yeah. So that was there. I wanted to spend more time with her. So that was around the same time. That's ultimately why I got out of the business like a year ago. So luckily, Josh, amazing coach, Josh Schofield, took over the academy. It's now branded North South. I train there every day. That's my gym. He's my coach. And so lucky that came along. And yeah. So yeah.
Wow, I'm so sorry, Luke. I honestly, I had no idea. So you're just enjoying being just a student now and
Love it. Yeah. So I
being on
train
the
there.
other side.
I train a few other martial arts now because I was always just committed to my gym the whole time. Now I'm doing a little bit of Muay Thai, getting back into Kali, like the Filipino martial art. That's another thing I've been doing for 30 years. That's my other passion. And I started went back into security work. I used to bounce when I was younger, and I quite enjoy the work, and I'm back doing that now. I've got more free time, so that's my side hustle now rather than jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
Is it-
also sorry to hear about that, mate. That's very, very tough, mate. So
Yeah.
those early days of teaching, where are you getting your teaching skills from? Because teaching's a skill in itself, right? So who are your sort of teaching mentors? And then also on the back of that, how much did teaching then help your jiu-jitsu, Luke?
Yep. So my teaching, I would say, John Will and Sean Kirkwood. Like if you ever do a class with Sean, he teaches, I believe, just like John Will. And John Will's, he's a brilliant not just good jiu-jitsu, he's a brilliant martial art, and he's a brilliant instructor. And he's just whole his philosophy, how he approaches it is, and how he explains things. Brilliant. So I'd like to think I teach like him. I'm sure I'll never achieve that level. That would be my goal. If I could teach as well as John, half as well, I would be happy with my coaching. And because one of the things that John instilled in all his affiliates or whatever was like, you don't owe your students anything other than your absolute best. When people are coming, they've taking time away from their family, they've had to work this job to pay for the fees, etc., etc. You don't phone into class every class like he does, and I'm sure I like to do. You prepare like you're going to teach a seminar, so you make a plan. I review my notes, I review whatever, and I think just that level, can't help but you understand the moves a little more, kind of thing, just because you take it so seriously. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's another drive to like I said, the bullying, the wanting to do your best for your students is like just one of those drives that takes you towards whatever your potential is, kind of thing, your maximum potential.
Mm.
Yeah, it's funny because he also says that at seminars about being a student as well, doesn't he? Like he's like, if you've paid money to be here, like you need to be focused for this 2 hours or whatever it is. Like sit close, pay attention, drill it. So it's the same. He's giving the same advice to a student as he is to his coaches.
Yep. Yeah. So one thing I always say to my students, so this is a little bit of a tangent. I don't like giving unsolicited life advice. This is training advice, I guess. But I'll
You're
ask
a
in
black
my
belt,
class,
mate. You can give fucking all sorts of advice.
I'll say to my students, does anyone have a question? And I was like, okay. Normally it's normal. No one has a question, right? They have a question, but they either don't want to speak up or, they haven't really, they're put on the spot. I'll say, right, your job is next time I ask, have a question. And even if I don't answer your question, even just by coming up with a question, you have improved your jiu-jitsu because you're taking ownership of your training. And that's the biggest thing. Like now, this is one thing I took from, like, he kind of put it best, like John Denho did like a seminar with him, and he's talking about like, if you train for 10 years, anyone with a good coach, you're going to get good. But how can you get that good in 3 years? That's the challenge now, because now there's no longer technique have and have not. So how can you get good in 3 years? And one of that's, taking ownership. So you don't just show up at the academy and hang on for the ride. No, when I'm rolling, what are my goals when I'm rolling? When I'm drilling technique, what am I drawing? If I get put on the spot, so you've got to drill technique for 5 minutes, what am I going to drill? you know, and you know, your coach has got you, and if you've got you, you'll get there twice as fast, you know.
You mentioned about like rolling with some of the Gracies previously. Did you ever roll with Helio?
Helio, no, I met him a few times, and he was a little bit. He was like in his 90s when I knew him, so he wasn't rolling then. I got on the ground with him. He choked me and stuff like that. But yeah, so I can tell the story if you want. It was like
Yeah, please.
pretty cool story because it's one of my dearest memories. Because this is when Royce was training for the rematch with Yoshida, in LA. So I was in LA at the time, and he was in his fight camp, and I was brown belt, skinny kid, and it kind of like the guys, you know, they don't mess around then when they're in the fight camp, and I just wasn't good enough to be part of that camp, you know. So they kind of left me home with the wives and kids and Alio. So it turned out to be like a blessing, right? So I got to spend time with the Grandmaster by himself. Guy Valenci, one of the Valenci brothers, was there also, and so I got to spend some time with him. Which, you know, so lucky and so grateful. But the story I remember was like he had Royce's books, had the books he did with Kid Believer there, and it was the
I've,
bottom book, and he's
I've
opening
got
the
those
book,
books.
and you know he's quite old now, and he's like, you know, oh, what's this? Why is Royce on the bottom? Well, how that guy pass his guard? And Guy's like explaining, no, it's he's showing escapes. The guy didn't pass his guard. Don't worry. And the next page, Royce, he's still on the bottom. What's this? Who's this guy? You know, and you have to understand, like around then he was like quite old, you know, still very, you know, with it and everything like that. But he, you know, like I'm sure like every parent would like, milk the kid. So they would help him. Here you go, Dad. Help you sit down. Help you get up. What do you want, Dad? And he would enjoy the attention. And then and he's like, I, that wouldn't happen to me. And I kind of said, well, what would you do? And he looks, he's like, get down. He's like, so that he gets on the ground and he does the guillotine from Psych He says, you turn on your side, you know, I'm going to check you. Once I get your neck, you're gone. And then gets back up in the chair. So that was like around this time of Star Wars. So for the Star Wars nerds, remember those Yoda? We had the walking stick and he had the sword fight and he goes back to it was like that, but jiu-jitsu. So
That's awesome. That's cool.
Fantastic.
I remember a guy telling a story, and he was interviewing Muhammad Ali, and he told a similar story. Like at this stage, Muhammad Ali was like, you know, pretty sick and not doing too well with Parkinson's and that sort of thing. And he said something about like one of his fights and what he did in one of his fights. And he said, like, Ali's eyes just lit up, and then for about 30 seconds, he stood up and he just shadow boxed for 30 seconds. And he's like, his wife was out of the room, it was just me and him. And he goes, I just looked at him and like, this man still has it, like it's still there, you know.
yeah.
And I reckon that's like similar to Elio, right? Like you're like, oh, it's still there, like it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, he would spar, and this is a lesson I took. Another lesson again, just going for a tangent. Maybe it's interesting for people who haven't heard it. He would still spar, not with me because we weren't at the academy, but right, you know, his whole life, and his
Yeah.
sparring would change, you know, and what he would look to get out of his sparring, would be different, you know. So, and at the end, it was defense from the bottom of the mount, you know. And I remember I learned this, like he'd read the Supermaster. Pedro Sal would tell me about this, you know. And he would say, like, you know, so he would get the mount. He's like, try and choke me. And if he, you know, he would get his defense from that. He'd keep his jiu-jitsu sharp. And he would say, like, of course, you can't be hard. You know, you can't be brutal on old man. But if you took it easy, he would kick you off and say, you're wasting my time. Give me someone else who's going to try and choke you.
Wow.
Yeah. Which you have to respect,
Wow.
right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't feel so bad now. I'm in my 50s, but so yeah, if he's still doing that when he's in his 90s, there's still hope for us old dogs,
Mm.
eh? Yeah. Um, so you've been on the scene forever, really, Luke. Like, tell us how you see the scene has changed the Australian landscape, especially like since you first started.
yeah. So I think, you know, I'm biased, of course, but I think Australia has, you know, always been at the forefront of a lot of things. Like every 10 years, you know, every 5 years, I hear Fred is bringing jiu-jitsu to Australia finally. I heard someone say it the other day, you know, I don't want to name names, but, oh, we're finally putting jiu-jitsu at the forefront. We've always been at the forefront in some shape or form, you know. It's maybe we don't get the credit we deserve, but, you know, for what Australia does, you know, in the UFC, you see we're punching well above our you know, our population and stuff like that. You know, Australia has a lot of brilliant martial artists, you know, and jiu-jitsu fighters as well. You know, I don't think we've seen half of that yet. You know, I think it's just especially nowadays. But yeah, I think we just keep going from strength to strength. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
How's the body holding up, Luke?
Pretty good. So I'm 49 now. So I train 7 days a week. So I have a class planned 7 days a week, and life happens. Only one day a week I can't get to the academy, so I don't plan rest days. I train a lot, so I've been very lucky to avoid injuries. I'm not athletic. I'm not a robust person, but haven't had any major injuries. And I roll with the young guys. They take it easy on me to a certain extent, but I take my medicine. Like I get, don't tell them I said this. But yeah, the blue belts, like, sometimes they have their way with me, but I love it. That's because, especially like now I'm back working security. It's either that I've got to be, ready to perform kind of thing. So I'd rather get beat up by a blue belt than some drunk guy. So, yeah.
That's right. We'll edit that out. We'll
Yeah.
take that bit out. So yeah, no stress, no stress. What do you think is next for jiu-jitsu? Because sometimes people sort of say, like, what's old becomes new again. Like, so people going back to closed guard, things like that. What do you think is on the cards for the future of jiu-jitsu?
All right. So two things I would say. What you said, like, jiu-jitsu goes in cycles. So I was talking to one of my friends who's trained about the same time. Like, every 10 years, like, that's the old stuff they only did back in Japan, and this is the new hotness. Then the new hotness is old, and then all of a sudden something cool. Of course there's innovations. Of course there are some revolutions and evolutions, and I'm always studying. I study everything. I study the latest Craig Jones stuff. Don't tell him I said that.
He's a big listener. He's a big listener.
No, Craig's a very, very smart guy. So, where are we going with that? So, what were we talking about?
The future.
Jiu-Jitsu head. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe this isn't your answer, but like, what has always driven things is what the cool kids are doing. Is what I say. So, why did nerds like me get into UFC? Because that's what all the cool kids are doing. Why did nerds like me start doing no-gi? Because ADCC happened. Because before that, I would say I'll never do no-gi. No-gi is not jiu-jitsu. I would say all those things. And now I pretty much train just no-gi. I'm happy to go back to the drawing board. So what's going to happen next? I think some Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or something is going to start some new tournament that we haven't thought of. Maybe this pit grappling is kind of a thing of that. It'll be something like that will drive that. That will be the next like major change. Whether it's bare knuckle MMA, or I keep saying someone's going to do Carly combined stick with grappling or something like that. Then all of a sudden, that's what the cool kids are doing. Where the money's coming from, probably that will be the thing. I'm not sure if that's where you're getting at. There will always be a technical evolution. That's what's going to be the next big thing. There'll be some $1 million prize. We're going to grapple underwater. We're going to do grappling out of space. It's going to be something, and then everyone can do that.
Yeah, like that UFC BJJ, right? That'll be interesting to see what that does, and how that kind of plays out. Different coaches they might get in or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying your stories, Luke. Have you got any security stories that you can tell us about where jiu-jitsu's helped? Kept you safe?
Yeah, plenty. So just not sure I can go to here. So let's go back to the 90s, right? So this is like when I was a white belt, blue belt, I started, so I was in university at the time, and it's good side job when you're doing university. And this is before people knew what mum and dads know what a rear naked choke is now. Back then, people didn't know these things.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a different time, how, the hospitality industry worked and stuff like that. So all the other bouncers were competitive. The guys I worked with were competitive bodybuilders, so they would go and do the stages. So so I competed under 70, right? So I was very skinny. I would cut weight. So even compared to them, I look skinnier again. And I was 18, and I just remember people saying, does your mom know where you are? What are you doing here? And so every time there was some drama, and it was quite wild back then. It's like, someone wanted to pick a fight. I'm gonna fight you, and pick me. And so it took a while, but it's jiu-jitsu saved me a lot, let's say. And so no specifics, but plenty of pressure testing my jiu-jitsu.
One of my friends in New Zealand was a kickboxer, and he was the same. Like, he was a small little Māori boy, and not a big guy at all. And it was the same. Like, they'd see the big island boys, and they're like, "Oh, I'll stay away from him. I'll take on this little 5'6" Māori boy." And it's like, I don't take him on. That is, if they're little and they're bouncing, there's probably a reason,
Yeah. I think people are starting to get that now. I don't have the cauliflower ears, but people now even it's weird how things are mainstream. It's not just just within the jiu-jitsu community. People check the ears. and go, oh, do
Yeah.
not mess. That's a red flag. I
Yeah.
don't have the cauliflower ears. I always wanted them. I always say my ears are messed up just enough. I don't get street cred, but I can't use earbuds. So I've got
Yeah, right.
that's the worst, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
that's
that's
also
the
that
beauty
next
of
level.
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, that's that next
Yeah.
level, right? Where you're a black belt and your ears are actually pretty good. You're like, oh god, this guy's really good. No one can touch his head. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's I mean that's jiu-jitsu in a nutshell, isn't it? Really, like the small person, is the most dangerous person in the room because they know a bit of jiu-jitsu. Do you have any other stories of, especially from the Gracie family? Like this is what our audience probably love the
Yeah, we
most.
love
So
stories, man.
yeah, please, any more to share? That
Tons of stories. Tons of
yeah,
stories. I was thinking one the other day. I was going to put this is just the one at the forefront of my mind since I was going to put it on my Instagram. So this was 2005. This is just giving me more insight in Angela, probably more than the family itself. So I was at the last World Championships in Brazil,
Mm.
and I got the press pass. I was there for Blitz magazine, so I got to go in the press pit. And Angela, who's normally like the most important person in the room, like had to go sit in the crowd, and she was like put out, because I was in the press pass, in there. And then so I went down, and she's come down, and the security guys there in Brazil, like massive guys, suits, and I believe they're armed. So it's like don't mess with like that, and
Yeah.
things are handled differently there. And Angela comes down and starts arguing with them, reaches over and pulls the press pass off my neck, puts it on her neck, and goes to walk around and just barge through them. And I don't think they knew who I were, but they're like, she says to them in Portuguese, like, you touch me and you don't know what's going to happen. You're going to have every bone in your body broken. And they're looking at each other, and I'm like, oh my god, because this would happen quite a bit. So half my stories are me having to deal with this. So I'm like, wow, okay, so I can't. I feel bad because Angela's in the wrong, but I can't let the guys put hands on my wife. So I'm like, I just remember thinking that was the moral of the story. Like, so this, I just remember thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die. So
Yeah.
so and then Royler comes running over and so kind of says like, don't do it, man. Like not in a threatening way, but like a way he felt sorry for the security
Yeah.
and he felt sorry for me, kind of thing. So yeah, but it was wild times. Yeah.
Wow.
fantastic.
What were those times like in Brazil? Like we hear, I mean, we've had so many Brazilians on the podcast. We're so lucky with the guys that we meet. People coming on from Brazil. Now they're living over here, or some who are based over there. We've spoken to, which is so cool. But we really do hear those mixed stories about Brazil too, right? So, how was your time when you would go over and travel over there? How did you feel safe? Were there areas that you're just like, we won't go there? What was that like?
So I love Brazil. I mean, I haven't been there in maybe 10 years now. So one of my goals is to go back there. It's my favorite place on the planet. It's just a
Wow.
magical place. But when I first went, there was again, this is before the internet. So you'll go to the news agency, get the Lonely Planet book. That was out, and you would call the number in the back. There's
Yeah.
three hotels. So imagine you go into Australia and you get 3 hotels. And
Wow.
not Airbnb now. So we called up, got there. I just remember the first night we got there was with Sean Kirkwood, John Simon, Ben Thomas, my friend. We were like, young. We're like, all right, let's go out. It's dark. We were pumped. Let's go out. And then outside we hear pop, 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 like gunshots. And like, okay, let's wait till tomorrow. We'll see the place under daylight, and then we'll go out tomorrow
Mm.
night. No, there's always stuff going on. But we nearly got robbed a few times. Like the people in general are very nice, but the danger side, I think it was a different beast. Like this is an exaggeration, but I think you get there are, my impression in Australia, there are mean people who just like to bash people, right? That happens. It's like violent thugs. In Brazil, it was kids who need to eat.
Yeah.
They didn't rob you, they didn't eat, so they weren't there to hurt you. They didn't have bad intentions. They were just trying to survive. So it's a very different kind of beast. So it's a danger, but it's a different kind of danger. But yeah, we would go. Remember the last time I was there, I was training boxing in the favela with Nobrach. That's Master Claudio. So he taught BTT, like a lot of the top fighters. He was their boxing coach for. So all the gyms, the rival gyms, would train boxing in the one place with Master Claudio. But anyway, remember when I was training there last time, it was before the Olympics, and they're trying to push people from one favela to the next to get them away from the city center. And the police were like shooting from the helicopter just into the favelas, and the people like ants. And I remember I was at Poyler's house, and I said, "Well, I'm only here for 4 weeks. I'm going to go train." on his training, and he's like, okay, well, I'll drive you today. You're not going to catch a taxi to training today. Yeah.
Wow. That was 2015, 2016. It was
That'd
still
be-
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
2012 was when I was there. I
London.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, because Rio was 2016 was the
Right.
Olympics. So yeah, must have been
Yeah, they were
just.
starting to try and clear the whole
starting to do it.
preparations had started. Yeah, and they're just trying to, because the favela's like the geography is quite weird how Rio's built with the cliffs and stuff. So the the rich luxuries down on the beachfront, and then 4 blocks back you've got the cliffs. And amazing in Australia would be like $1 million views, but that's where all the favela is, So yeah.
Wow.
Like all the really wealthy people would be like up on those hills with the views, right? It's different there.
Yeah, you go up there.
Was that one of those things because I've kind of heard people talking about going over there, and so if you are going out, like, you'd have money stashed, but maybe you just keep $30 somewhere, so if you do get jumped, you're like, yeah, okay, here's $30, like, were those sorts of things happening, or were you told to do those sorts of things? Like, did the men over, or did the people over there, the guys over there, sort of sit there and say to you, hey, like, if something happens, just give it to them, or did you get any kind of schooling on it?
Not Brazil specific, because again, I was a martial arts nerd. So before I went to Brazil, like I've been training self-defense and martial arts since I was much younger, like since my teens. So that was kind of stuff that were like, I was very lucky to have a lot of coaches who were they had a lot of real world experience. So which is rare at that time. Like most of the martial arts in the early 90s, late 80s got their impression of from Hollywood. Imagine if you saw what in movies now is what you thought was real life. We know that's not the truth, but 80-90% of martial arts were like, I'm going to fight like Van Damme or Seagal or something like that. Anyway, I was lucky my coaches like say, because then some coaches would say, just take a fake wallet and put like magazine clippings in there. And then my coach would say, no, don't do that. They think you're ripping them off. You'll get stabbed just for being smart. So you put your $100 in your shoe, you put your $20 in your wallet, and it's just traveler's tax. It's just, you pay it, you don't have to sweat it. Yeah, that kind of stuff, yeah.
Wow. Well, it's been amazing getting to know you, Luke. I think you've probably shown the internet a different side to yourself that they may not know about from what they can see on your Instagram's sort of feed. So thank you very much for giving up your time. And like I said, I hope our audience, from what I know of them, they love these stories about back in the day. And like I said, you've got the royalty of the actual Gracie family in there with you. Brentos, did you want to do the quiz? We do a little pop quiz at the end.
Let's do it.
Very straightforward.
A couple of these I might know by now, but we'll see how we go, right? So, iPhone or Samsung?
Google Pixel.
Mate, I've been waiting for someone to say that.
My day job's in IT. My day job's in IT.
That's the best. I've literally been waiting for someone to say that. Strength or flexibility?
Flexibility.
Pasta or rice?
Pasta.
What's the favorite belt that you've had?
Purple by far.
Yeah. We've had a few people say that too, haven't we, Ken?
Yeah, that's my favorite too.
Yeah. Guard pull or takedown?
I pulled guard in every single match I ever had in my life. I'm not proud of it, but
why not? I would be. I am.
Straight to legend status for me. Gi or no gi?
20 years ago, gi exclusively. Now, no gi exclusively. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT for you? The jiu-jitsu GOAT?
Royce changed the world. Yeah.
When you said it's like pre-UFC and post-UFC, like it's very true, right? Very cool.
Yeah.
If Royce was here, Royce would say, no, it was my brother who created the UFC and my father who created Jiu-Jitsu. So Royce would be correcting me here now, but his impact on me, and I think if we're not talking about not just outside tournament, Royce had the greatest impact as a fighter than anyone ever had.
Yeah, I think so. We've got 2 more questions, mate. These will define you as a person. As an Australian, can you drive a manual car?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then the last one, do you wear Crocs?
Loud and proud, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
No.
I don't wear Crocs. That's the job. I wear them ironically. I always say, hey, my eyes are up here. Yeah, so yeah.
Oh, mate, what a legend. I love it. Luke, it's been fantastic having you on, mate. Before we do jump off, thinking of you and your wife, mate. We don't have any words to sort of to add, I don't think, but definitely thoughts are with you guys. And if the Jiu-Jitsu community can do anything, that the Jiu-Jitsu community will be there at any time. So that's the cool part about this community, I think.
Absolutely.
But that's it, guys. We'll finish it there. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Roll or Die. Keep training, stay humble, and remember, it's not about the belt, as Luke's still been talking about. It's definitely about the journey. A big shout out to our sponsor, Athletic Body Care, for keeping us fresh on and off the mats. And hey, if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe on YouTube and all other podcast platforms. You can do that. You can subscribe on all of them. You can subscribe on Spotify, Podcast Republic, YouTube. Do it all. We appreciate it. Check out our merchandise and tell your friends about the podcast. Tim's repping our t-shirts today, which we love. Play it at your open mats. Tell your friends. Thank you very much, Luke. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you, Kim, for finding yet another absolute legend of a guest. You're a star. And everybody, we will see you on the next episode of Roll or Die. Much love. Peace out.